Before I dive into what happened, I need to warn you about a few things. First, my mind's not all there. Schizophrenia has been gnawing at me for years, and for the past 14, I've choked down every pill they've thrown my way, each one a fleeting whisper of relief, never enough to silence the chaos clawing inside my skull. They tried electroshock and a last-ditch stab at a cure, but instead of salvation, it shattered me, splintering my sanity into jagged shards that left both me and the doctors drowning in regret. Second, I'm a coward. Snakes, spiders, the mundane terrors, I can face those. But when the real darkness creeps in, I crumple, curling into a trembling ball, waiting for it to slither past. After everything I've been through, you'd be hard-pressed to blame me. And finally, the most crucial piece, everything I'm about to tell you started after those shock treatments. Before that, sure, I'd catch glimpses of oddities, flickers in the haze of my hallucinations, but they were nothing compared to what came next. After the shocks, my life twisted into a relentless, waking nightmare. I'm writing this because I'm running out of time. I don't know how long I've got before they find me again, and I need to spill as much as I can, even if no one believes me. I'm screaming into the void, praying someone out there knows how to pull me from this abyss. It began the day after my surgery, when they dragged me in for the shock therapy. I was strapped to a hospital bed, the stiff mattress biting into my back. I'd been tethered to that wretched thing since they dumped me on the medical floor, so I'd grown numb to its discomfort, or so I thought. The glass door hissed open, and Dr. Marcus stepped in, his shadow stretching across the sterile tiles. "Good, you're awake," he said, his voice flat, like he'd rehearsed it 100 times. "We need to run a diagnostic test. I know you've been through hell, but this has to happen. The sooner, the better. So, tell me, what do you see?" He held up a card, a crude drawing of a pear smeared across it. "A pear," I muttered, my throat dry. "Are we done?" His face tightened, a flicker of pity, or was it dread, creasing his brow. "Not yet." He flipped to the next card, a scribbled house and family, like something clawed out by a toddler's hand. "A house and a family," I said, irritation creeping in. "Is this really necessary?" "I need to move, my legs are screaming." "Patience, Ryan," he replied, my name dripping from his lips like a hollow attempt at comfort. "One more. Just tell me what you see." He raised the final card, and my stomach lurched. It was a shadow, a pitch-black silhouette of a person, standing alone, no body to cast it. No features, no depth, just an endless void. Except for the eyes. Two tiny, piercing pinpricks gleamed where eyes should have been, like dying stars trapped in a midnight sky. My breath hitched. "A shadowy figure, with stars for eyes," I rasped, my voice trembling. "Where'd you get that one?" "That's not from the usual set." I wasn't lying. I'd taken this test dozens of times, new meds, new treatments, same old cards. I could recite them blind. But this? This was alien. Dr. Marcus didn't flinch, but his silence stretched too long. "Interesting," he finally said, scribbling something on his clipboard. "It seems you're experiencing unexpected side effects. That's why we do this, to gauge if the treatment's helping or..." His voice trailed off, but I could fill in the blank, "or tearing you apart." I'd heard his spiel before, and I didn't care. Looking back, maybe I should have listened, maybe he was trying to help. But I was exhausted, pinned to that bed like a specimen, and all I wanted was out. Eventually, he finished his lecture, scratched out another prescription, and let me up. My left leg was a numb, tingling mess, but even that was better than enduring another second of his droning. He shuffled me back to my room, the door clicking shut behind me with a cold, final snap. The lock turned, and I was alone again, or so I thought. That shadow, those starlit eyes, they lingered in my mind, a stain I couldn't scrub away. That was the beginning. And soon, I'd come to dread that image with every fiber of my rotting soul. I didn't mind my room, really. It was a sanctuary of sorts, despite the suffocating monotony of its whitewashed walls, stark, sterile, broken only by the occasional smear of crayon, a mad scribble from some lost soul who'd been here before me. The rest of the space bent to my will, though. The bed was a far cry from that torture rack they'd strapped me to on the medical floor, its mattress soft enough to cradle my fractured mind. Next to it sat a small table, crowned with an adjustable desk lamp that flickered like a dying star. There was a single drawer, unlocked yet maddeningly out of my control, no key, no power. Not that it mattered. Inside, I stashed my sketches, my jagged little escapes drawn in secret. I loved to draw, needed it, even, and that drawer was my fortress, guarding them from the vultures circling this place. The other residents, they'd pick at anything, everything, tearing into your soul if you let them. Like carrion crows with human faces. By now, you've probably pieced it together, haven't you? This room, this whole wretched tale reeks of a mental institution. Give yourself a pat on the back if you've guessed it, because for the 4 years before the electroshock fried my brain, I'd been rotting in the Augustinian Institute for the Mentally Unstable. A fancy name for a madhouse, a loony bin, a cage for the broken. Before that, I had a life, a real one, with my parents. We wrestled my illness together, a twisted little family dance. And despite what? You might think, we were happy. Mom would whip up breakfast every morning, her laughter a shield against the whispers in my head. Dad would sprawl on the couch with me, the TV's glow drowning out the shadows that flickered at the edges of my vision. Home was my haven, a place where the hallucinations felt almost manageable. Then, in a heartbeat, it was gone. A night out for them, a storm tearing through the sky. I remember the rain, relentless, hammering against the windows, keeping me awake while they were out there. The wet, cobbled road betrayed their tires, and their car spun into a ditch. Neither made it back. That's all I'll say. It's a wound I don't touch, a scar I can't bear to trace. With no family left, I was dumped into Dr. Marcus's hands, my physician, my jailer. He and his white-coated cronies had one mission, patch me up just enough to shove me out the door, making room for the next lab rat. Too bad for them, their drugs were useless. For years of poking, prodding, and watching me like a specimen under glass brought us to the electroshock and the hell that followed. I sank onto my bed that night, fishing my sketching supplies from the drawer. When boredom gnawed too deep, drawing was my lifeline, capturing the day's oddities in charcoal and paper. But I'd been laid up, useless, for most of it. The only thing worth sketching was that damned flashcard from Dr. Marcus's test. I started with him, his stiff posture, the card raised like a guillotine blade. But when I tried to draw what was on it, that shadow, those star-pricked eyes, my hand froze. The image wouldn't come. It was as if the card had been blank, a void in my memory and on the page. Even now, I can see it clear as death, but back then? Nothing. A headache throbbed behind my eyes, sharp and relentless. I just wanted the day to die. So, despite sleeping 15 hours after the surgery, I collapsed back and let the darkness take me. I jolted awake too early, the room swallowed in gloom. No clock, no watch, just the barred window above my bed, black as pitch, no dawn to pierce it. It had to be hours before the doctor's 8 a.m. rounds, when they'd unlock the doors and let us breathe. Trapped, I stewed in the silence, boredom gnawing at me. I didn't dare flick on the lamp, didn't want to rouse the poor bastard across the hall. So I sat there, steeped in the dark, waiting. Then, out of the corner of my eye, something shifted. A flicker of movement in the shadows of my room. I whipped my head around, part hammering, but there was nothing, just the same barren walls staring back. I turned toward the door again, willing my pulse to settle. But the air felt wrong, thick, heavy, like it was watching me. And deep down, I knew something was there. Something that didn't belong. I turned, and there it was, a sight that clawed its way into my soul. Utter darkness bled into the room, a shadow birthed from shadows, its form twisting into something humanoid. 2 white pinpricks, like dying stars, burned in its eyeless face. The monster from the card, it had followed me. It scuttled onto my bed on all fours, a grotesque mockery of life, inching closer until it loomed at eye level, its void-streaked face mere breaths from mine. Those starlit eyes bored into me, empty of emotion, devoid of anything human. I squeezed my eyes shut, curling into a trembling ball, tears streaming as I choked on silent prayers for it to end. I could hear it, its hot, ragged breath rasping in my ear, a sickening warmth spilling from nowhere. No mouth, no nose, just an abyss that exhaled louder, louder, until it drowned out my sobs. Minutes stretched into eternity, and I almost begged it to finish me. Then, as suddenly as it began, the breathing stopped. Only the low, electric hum of the walls remained, buzzing like a swarm of unseen flies. I didn't dare open my eyes, not for a long, long time, too terrified of what might still be lurking. When I finally pried them apart, the room was still cloaked in pre-dawn gloom, but the thing was gone. I fumbled for the lamp, flipping it on with shaking hands, desperate to banish the shadows. The light revealed nothing but my empty room, no trace of it, just me and the damp stain on my pants. Humiliation burned through me. I pitied the nurse who'd have to deal with that mess. Across the hall, someone stirred, a faint shuffle breaking the silence. Another patient, I figured. I angled the lamp away from the door, dimming its glare, and tried to claw my way back to sleep. It didn't work. Morning crept in, the sun dragging itself over the horizon. The doors unlocked, and the nurses swooped in with fresh clothes, their faces pinched with annoyance and disgust. I spilled everything to Dr. Marcus later, not for help, just to let him scribble it into his damn notes. His concern was palpable, though, and he shoved some new meds into my hands to smother the hallucinations. I swallowed them eagerly. No way in hell did I want that thing back. The drugs came with side effects, dizzy spells, a constant fog, but they worked. 4 months, the world stayed mercifully ordinary. After that first week, I even thanked Dr. Marcus, genuine gratitude spilling out. His stunned expression was almost comical, but he knew I meant it. From then on, he softened, taking a real interest in my mess of a mind, tweaking the meds to ease the haze. For 3 months, life in the institute was the closest to bearable it had ever been. Then I screwed up. One of the nurses forgot my psych meds, a careless slip, and I didn't catch it. Didn't even notice at first. Off the pills, everything still felt fine. I slept deep that night, and the next, no whispers, no shadows. But the 3rd day off them? That's when the mask slipped. I woke to the sharp click of my door unlocking. Groggy, I flicked on the lamp before cracking my eyes open. No doctor stood there this time, just the door, yawning wide. I slid out of bed, stepped into the hall, and locked the door behind me, the key cold in my trembling hand. I turned and froze. The asylum was gone. The hallway wasn't a hallway anymore. It was a grotesque, living thing, a pulsating, fleshy tunnel of nightmares. The walls oozed with rancid fluids, dripping from sores that wept like open wounds. Blood slicked the floor, a squelching carpet of veins throbbing beneath my feet. The doors to the other rooms had morphed into puckered, glistening sphincters. And down the corridor, a figure stood, its back to me, its sobs echoing wetly through the air. I tried to turn, to run, but my body seized, every muscle locked tight. Some primal instinct screamed that whatever lurked behind me was worse, far worse, than what lay ahead. I glanced back at my door, but it was gone, swallowed by the writhing flesh. The knob jutted out from the folds, a cruel tease. Panic birthed a desperate thought: if I could just get back inside, I'd be safe. My room, a flimsy lifeline in this hellscape. Stupid, maybe, but it was all I had. The figure down the hall was the last thing I'd approach. I lunged for the knob, my hand sinking into the slimy, squirming mess. The flesh tightened around it, resisting, but I pushed harder, my knuckles brushing metal. I gripped it, twisting with all I had, as the wall pulsed and groaned against me. The fleshy wall clamped down on my arm, a sickening crunch reverberating through my bones as it crushed me, pinning me in its slimy grip. Down the hall, the figure stirred, turning slowly to face me, its sobs swelling into a piercing wail. Its pitch-black skin glistened, unbroken save for those pinprick white eyes, two searing stars leaking a thick, gray ooze that dribbled down its hollow cheeks. The crying grew louder, sharper, a banshee's shriek bouncing off the writhing, meaty walls, filling the air with a sound that clawed at my sanity. It stopped a few feet away, perfectly still, the gray slime pooling at its feet. My arm screamed, a white-hot agony blazing through me as blood seeped from the mangled limb, mingling with the gore-soaked floor. I screamed for help, my voice cracking, while inside I begged for this to be a dream, a vision, anything but real. Then it spoke. A voice like rusted metal scraping bone, guttural and inhuman, erupted from the void where a mouth should have been. My skin prickled, goosebumps rippling over me as the sound alone threatened to shatter what little courage I had left. But its words, they were worse. We are in you now, and you are in us. Neither can escape. You cannot stop us. My knees buckled, and I collapsed into the muck, the fluids splashing around me, warm and rancid. I sobbed, helpless, waiting for the shadow to unleash whatever torment it had planned. Warm hands gripped my shoulders, and I flinched, recoiling from the evil I was sure had ensnared me. Ray? Are you with us, Ray? The voice shifted, human now, urgent. I looked up, trembling, and found Dr. Marcus kneeling over me, his hands steadying my shaking frame. The hallway snapped back to normal, cold tiles, locked doors, no trace of the fleshy abyss. My arm was whole again, uncrushed, though the phantom pain lingered. I couldn't stand, my legs were jelly, tears streaming as he half-carried me to his office. It took over an hour for my sobs to quiet enough to choke out the story. I spared no detail, the sobbing shadow, the crushing flesh, the voice, and watched his face twist through horror, disgust, concern, and something I'd never seen in him before, raw fear. That scared me more than anything, because Dr. Marcus didn't flinch at patients' ramblings. Until now. He made damn sure the nurses never skipped my meds again. But the pills? They stopped working. I don't know why, maybe the shadows broke something in me the drugs couldn't touch. The hallucinations crept back, flames licking the hallways, Neil squirming with maggots, and those star-eyed creatures stalking the dark corners of my room. When the doctors realized nothing could dam the flood in my mind, they cut me loose. I was no use to them anymore, a lost cause clogging up their precious space. So I went back to the only place I'd ever known, home. It's been 27 days. Each one worse than the last. The visions don't just haunt me, they hunt me. Those star-eyed shadows trail me everywhere, their pinprick gazes burning into my back. My house is the only refuge they can't breach, but even that's crumbling. Outside, the world twists in an instant, streets melt into fleshy piles, people dissolve into shadows or grotesque, mutilated corpses, their gaping wounds glistening. If I dare step out, they corner me. They cut me open, burn me alive, I feel it all, every searing slice, every blistering flame. It's torture, relentless and real. I can't leave. Food's running low, and I don't trust the cans anymore. What's inside? Eyes staring back? Clumps of hair? Maggots wriggling in the broth? It's a sick game, and I'm losing. Even now, the distortions are seeping in. The living room walls pulse like a beating heart, slow and wet. The TV spits static, an endless hiss that grates on my nerves. I don't think anyone will believe me, why would they? I'm terrified to step outside. They're out there, waiting, surrounding me. I can feel their eyes, those cursed stars, boring through the windows, the walls. They're patient. They know I'll have to leave eventually. And when I do, they'll be ready.